All right, welcome back. This is kind of a interesting interview because, well, it was a fun interview because I've talked to Russell and David a couple times, but I'm currently traveling on the road this week. I'm visiting some family, so this is all done on my phone because where I am, there's no internet connection. But so I apologize for any weird things. I know that during the interview you'll see the banner across the bottom that the comments about comments. So just don't worry about that. Again, um, it's a great interview, and please support this project because it's well deserving. All right, thanks.
Else that's not this, so nothing else can be online. And awesome. Yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right. So joining me today is Russ Nohelty and David Pepose, who are both, well, Russell's the kind of the creator of the CTHULHU Is Hard to Spell, and David is contributing this time. So Russell, why don't you tell us about, this is the third volume of the anthology. What inspired the first, you to kind of do this to start off with, and how, made you want to continue to another?
Well, I'm going to, I'll give all, well, not all credit, but all inspiration to Tyler James and Jason and the team at C for Cthulhu, because they had their book out for a little bit before mine. And it's an ABC book with Cthulhu. And I was like, that really is hard to spell. And I had we had just done our book Monsters and Other Scary Shit, and to tell us like what they liked, what they didn't like. And one of the things they didn't like was it was all monsters. Like they didn't know what to expect. And like some people liked it, but the majority of people were like, make it all ages, make it all color, and like please God, give it a tighter theme. And so when we were thinking about it, we kind of asked a bunch of people like what their favorite fandom was and like what they read. And Lovecraft kind of came out easily at the top. It was easy for us to do it because like we know how we were doing all our stuff on Kickstarter at that time, and like Lovecraft was just a huge like fandom on Kickstarter. So we went with that. And then in my research so I had the name like right then, and then I did a bunch of research, and the joke is that Lovecraft never really settled on a pronunciation or a spelling during his life. So if you look at the first book, it's a blackboard where the teacher who's being eaten by Cthulhu has a bunch of spellings, and the students summoned Cthulhu basically by just saying all of these wrong spellings and basically saying whatever they wanted. So like the joke, the inside like nested Inception style joke is it's really easy because Lovecraft never spelled it. So anyone who says that he did is lying to you.
And when were you, what was your first experience with, Lovecraft and, his works?
So I think this really informs the anthology because it was Jacob's Ladder, I think, either Jacob's Ladder or In the Mouth of or something that Lovecraft did not write. And part of this story, because a lot of what we're doing is sort of remixing Lovecraft and showing different ways that creators have used them and creators have made them their own. And one of the most interesting things about Lovecraft from an inside baseball perspective is you just like, there are very few instances where a person's legacy was carried on by someone that was not part of the family. I don't know if David thinks about this. I think about all the time, like if I die, like who's like, am I just going to fall into like even more obscurity? Is someone going to carry on my legacy? Like what happens to my work? And it's almost always carried on by a spouse or a family member. And in some cases, like a really close friend. Lovecraft didn't have many of those. He was a cantankerous, unlikable, and like kind of died penniless and alone in obscurity. And yet his work endured. and it's kind of like a great resilient message of like how of like not just his life, but like how a work can resonate so much with a group of people that they feel the need to carry it on. And like I think about this all the time, and that like if that would be the hope for my work, that like whether I die in obscurity or die like popular, like people will like carry it on after I'm gone. And so that's I think that's what kept me going for the 3 volumes. But that inspiration came from like that one moment where I looked at the board book. It was like, Cthulhu is hard to spell, and I was like, well, that's a dynamite brand name. And sure enough.
So, David, I know we've talked about your work with the OZ. What's your background with Lovecraftian storytelling and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's funny. For me, I came into it pretty fresh. I think my initial introduction to the Lovecraft mythos, actually, it was through the Fallout series of video games. There was a lot of sort of Lovecraftian Easter eggs that were thrown into it, particularly Fallout 4. For those who haven't played the game, it's set in a post-apocalyptic America, post-nuclear war, and each of the different games usually takes place in a different city or location. And Fallout 4 took place outside of Boston. And so there was a lot of kind of Lovecraft and Lovecraftian kind of lore to it. There was a serial killer named Pickman in there. There was a sort of a Lovecraftian cult that like you were digging in. They called them Dunwich. It was Dunwich Borers, I think was the company's name. So like lots of fun Easter eggs with that. And what really got me sort of more experienced with the lore was Russell. Russell had actually reached out to me for the 2nd volume of Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell. And I was so underwater working on Spencer and Locke 2 and going to the chapel back to back that I could not get my act together to sort of figure out like what's the deal with Lovecraft. And so Russell, he told me, we're doing a 3rd volume and I think this might be it. So, this is sort of your last chance. And I knew, I was like, I've seen Russell sell these books. I know that Cthulhu has this diehard fan base. And so I started doing the research and the idea of this sort of existential terror of realizing just how small you are in the face of these greater beings, these elder gods. I thought that was so interesting. And the idea of sort of seeing a human being at sort of the infinitesimal scale in comparison to something like Cthulhu, that really appealed to me as a writer. And that was something that really kind of went into Mon House and I's story, The Master of Kung Fthuilhu, which is sort of the final story in this 3rd volume of the anthology. So it's one of those things. As I started kind of learning more about it and really delving into the lore, I was kind of like, oh, like it's a different sort of creepiness, it's a different style of horror, one that really kind of creeps up on you, and it's really about the vibe versus sort of who's the slasher in the night. I've ever since I've been thinking a lot about Lovecraft and a lot about the Cthulhu mythos, and this may be my first time dipping my toe in the pool, but I don't think it'll be the last.
So let's continue with that. Tell us a little bit about your contribution to the anthology, and who are you working with again, and kind of what the story's kind of about without giving too much away.
Sure. Before David answers, like, do you guys see this the comment at the bottom that says like live viewer comment shows up on StreamYard, or is this just me?
I see that, but I think it's just a
all right. I just want to make sure that like it's not going to be on the stream. We're like, I don't care if it's on the stream. I just want to make sure that if it was there, like you were aware of it, and I'm not.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
No. So yeah, to speak to your question, Yeah, for those who followed my work, you know, with Spencer and Locke, going to the chapel, the OZ, Scouts Honor over at Aftershock, sort of the one connecting thread to all of my creator-owned work to date has been Mon House, who's done covers for me on all of my series. He's really terrific, just a really kind of visceral and sometimes creepy style. And so Mon and I have been talking for a long time about doing interiors together, doing some kind of sequentials. And so when Russell reached out to me about this, I was like, oh, this feels like Mon House just all over. And so yeah, our story, it's called The Master of Kung Thulu. And yeah, it's, you know, it's a martial arts revenge story that sort of dips its toes in the Lovecraft mythology. And sort of what's a Lovecraftian style of martial arts look like. And so, you know, there's a lot of inspiration from Fraction and Brubaker and Aja's Immortal Iron Fist. You know, went into that a lot. But yeah, you know, for anyone who's read my work, most people know I love pop culture mashups. And so the idea of kind of doing a Lovecraftian style of martial arts, I reached out to Russell fairly early on in the process. And I said, here's an idea. It's just 2 words, Kung Thulu. And I remember Russell saying, that sounds like something I'd like to read. So we were off to the races pretty quickly. And yeah, I'm so thrilled with how our story turned out. You know, Mon is just a powerhouse. And, you know, we did some really cool and interesting stuff with the colors. He and I worked together very intently on that. And yeah, you know, it's yeah, I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of this anthology. And I'm so thrilled I got in when the going was good. And I want to thank Russell again for having us on board.
Well, you know, like you said last time he contacted you, you were, you know, had 2 books. Now you have 3 Marvel books. So, you know,
it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, mercifully, you know, I think that's something that is a big misconception about comics in general, but especially for our anthology. You know, Russell gave us a really long runway with which to work. Mm-hmm. You know, he knows that, you know, creators can be like herding cats at the best of times. And, you know, this was during, you know, we're still in, but, you know, the pandemic was sort of in full force. And so, you know, we were working on this. Let's see, I think I pitched this. It was in 2020.
Yeah, it was November 2020.
Yeah. And, you know, just by sheer amount of stuff that we were working on. Yeah, we filed that around Halloween of last year. So it's been a long time coming. And mercifully, I had only just started. I'd already written Kung Thulu well before Marvel reached out as far as my Savage Avengers work goes. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's always fun to see stuff start to come out and you say, how long has this been in the works for? And it's a fun little time capsule, I think, for creators like me.
So, Russell, tell me a little bit about the other stories involved in the anthology, and you know what, you know, about who what, you know, are the creative teams and all that.
Sure. So one thing before, while I'm pulling that up so I can get to the page, because there's 35 creative teams and almost 200 pages. What's wonderful about a creator like David is I have implicit trust in, like, he can pitch me 2 things and I know it's going to be delivered. So like if you're thinking about, like, as a creator, as like your own creator, like, what can I do to be in anthologies? Like, me and David have had a relationship going back years and years and years, not just as like I admire his work, but I admire like how he works a table and all of that stuff. So like when he pitches me like Kung Thulu, and that's his, I know also his like thing is high concept, right? Like it's this meets this, it's like very easily and digestible. And I've seen his work and I've enjoyed his work. Like it's a lot easier to be like, yeah, man, go nuts with that. I'm probably just going to say yes, because like, I just know what it's like, what you can deliver, as opposed to other create. And I think it's two things that you can take away from that as a creator is, one of them is like, if you know the editor, like, and they know your work, you can probably get away with like, and he still did the pitch, like he still did a full pitch, but like, you can get away a little bit more with just saying like, here's my thing, what do you think? Sometimes when an editor, when I'm doing a submission, I'm like, hey, I don't want to backdoor this submission, but like, I think this might be good, but I'm not sure. Can I just give you a logline pitch, and then like I'll go do a whole thing if you think it's right, and if it's wrong, like I don't want to waste your time. But other like when you do a pitch, the twist is the most important piece of a short story. Like you don't have a lot of time to get into it. You don't have 5 issues. Like this is not Scout's Honor. This is not like Ichabod Jones. Like you don't have. It's not Savage Avengers where like the characters have decades of backstory that you can build off of. This is like you need hook because you need to get into it quickly. And if you can't get into it quickly, or if you don't have a hook that's gonna like turn the story very quickly, it's going to be hard to get there. And the tighter the page count is, so David has 8 pages, which I think I only give to 2 other creative teams, the better the hook has to be. Like a 2-page hook has to be like, the page 1 has to be the hook. Like it has to happen immediately. So some of the other creative teams are, well, the biggest difference between this book and the previous books is the biggest complaint that I got was the covers didn't relate to the inside of the book. So for this one, we really wanted to change that. And so the cover is Cthulhu jumping off of a pylon and trying to suplex or jump onto Zeus. And so in the main story of the book, if there is a main story, is there's 3-4-page stories that are a wrestling match between Zeus and Cthulhu with the fate of the universe on the line. And I did that with my collaborator, Eric Lervold. And we've spent a lot of time on that. He loves wrestling. So he suggested a lot of changes and tweaks to certain messaging that I had so that I could like have a bunch of inside jokes. And we didn't like, to me, this is it. Like, this is it for me on this anthology series. Like, there may be other editors, like maybe other production companies. There may be somebody to come along and do other stuff. But like, I always went into this knowing this was the end. And, for me, I never expected to do another one after this, and maybe never like edit another anthology. So both me and Eric really left everything on the line when it came to this one, and it becomes it's like everything both of us love. It's like high energy, it's like funny, it's like raucous, it's like silly, and like it tells like it delivers a thematic message, and the thematic message I think of this anthology whole series, especially because this whole book was being developed between March 2020 and now, was sort of Lovecraft has an ethos that is the world doesn't care about you, the gods think you're ants, you're gonna die alone with nothing, and you should fear that very much. So it's a message of fear, and like about half the country like believes that message, like based upon certain like things that have happened. It seems like fear is a very powerful thing that people have been falling back on. I'm very scared. The other half of that though is absurdism, which is like and Dadaism, which is like a surrealism, which is the thing that I love. If you know my work, you know how absurd a lot of this stuff is. And the general ethos of that is you're going to die alone. Like no one cares about you. The gods, if they exist, don't care about you, and you're just going to rot in the ground. And isn't that hilarious? Like, isn't that like hilarious that like the universe could possibly work that way? Like, it's like that is so hilariously funny, and like I see the humor in it, and sort of is this message of kind of hope, like yes, things are bad, but like we can still like enjoy life even in that like oddness. And so this book really came down to like fear versus hope, and like what in this world, like what is more powerful. I don't think that it ever comes broadly across in any story except maybe ours. where they literally hit the nail on the head, like, because that's the point of like the wrestling story, like it's very big and like explosive. But I always tell people, I said people in the introduction, like, I don't know if this is going to be a Lovecraft story you think you think you're going to get. Like, I don't know what you think you're going to what you think you're going to like, what you want in this book. But I desperately hope that this is the kind of anthology that you need, because I think that it rises up to meet the moment that we're in, and the idea of like fear versus hope and what really matters at the end of the day. I mean, it's big silly anthology, but like I like to believe that like if you read this book, and especially books 1 and 2 and then 3, you're going to get an overall picture of like what matters in the world, really. And so that's where our story kind of comes in. We also have, I'll just go through some of the stories. We have a Christian Gossett who did the Red Star, doing a story called Cthulhu Town with us. Emily Reset and Heather Gibbs do a family feud style between Lovecraft gods and mythology. And Emily's 16 years old. James Maddox, who I've wanted to work with forever, since he did a book called The Dead with Hickman. He does a story with Michael Mann called Secrets, which is like one of my favorites by the Necronomicon. Andrea Rosales, who won the Milestone Initiative. One of the Milestone Initiative slots is a story with Diane Barker called Elder Buns, where the Poseidon and monsters from the deep come kind of pull pranks on Lovecraft gods. Mary Bellamy from My Little Pony finishes her trilogy that she started in the first book, continued in the second book, and now in this book. Trina Robbins was the first woman to ever draw Wonder Woman. Did an amazing story with Leonie O'Moore, which is like a romance novel. It's like a romance story, but it's with Cthulhu. It's like Cthulhu and a woman go on a date together. And it's like it just like perfectly in the style of like a romance comic. And I love it so much. Nathan Luth did a big battle between Lovecraft gods and Tolkien gods. Brandy June did this really funny parody. Vanessa Del Agria, who's a Disney character animator, did a story with the late Eddie Headington, and also Claire Donahue covered. And that's just 12 of the stories. That's just 12 of the 35 stories. I could keep going on, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
So it sounds like there's, you have a lot you definitely have a lot of to offer people who back the campaign. What specifically are rewards and are you offering for,
I think my friend Travis Gibb, who's doing Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, it's way better. He's way better at like doing the rewards than I am. Like he has boxes and covers. Like I'm pretty simple. Like you get a book, you can get a pin. You can get a book or a pin, and you can do that a bunch of times. You can get a bunch of books and a bunch of pins. You can get some ebooks. You can get audio commentaries. But like really, I'm focused almost exclusively on just books and pins, and then many multiples of that if you want it. There's some retailer tiers. There's some pin tiers. I really, every time I look at Travis's campaign, I'm like, man, I really need to like a book box where like, there's like prints and pins and like metal bookmarks and all sorts of cool things. And then I'm like,
yeah, I'm going to be talking to him.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. And I'm like, it's very easy. Like, you want a book? I got a book. You want like, I don't know, like a Greco-Roman painting of Cthulhu? Like, that's someone else's thing. But like, if you want the book, I got books.
So, kind of to wrap things up. So David, bring you back in for this. Was there, what besides, working with Russell? Well, was there anything else you kind of got from writing your story besides your possibly more story Cthulhu themed stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think this. I feel like doing anthology stories is really rewarding, and I think for a lot of the reasons that Russell had said, which is you have to really get in and get out fast. There's not a lot of time to be self-indulgent. You have to be really stripped down and really streamlined, and you have to get to the point. And so it's sort of the difference between baking and eating an entire cake versus having a really good cupcake. Anthology stories are that really good cupcake, and so I had a lot of fun. Not just working with friends of mine. Monhouse and DC Hopkins are two friends of mine in the industry as well as collaborators. So it was a real joy to work with them. But also, being able to kind of play in this playground and to do so with sort of the minimum of investment. You're able to really just focus on what is the story, what is the cool part of this story, and then you get in and get out. And I think there's a joy to that, that it's different than writing a long form series where that's a marathon. Sometimes you just kind of want to book it on a nice sprint, and then you're in and out and it's done. That this exists. You don't have to wait 5 issues for it to exist. And so I really had a lot of fun with that, and just sort of being in the company of so many great creators, so many people who love the Lovecraft mythos, who have grown up in it and have really been steeped in it. And I thought it was so nice and so welcoming to sort of be included in something like this. And I really think, if any readers haven't been following Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell, I read the first 2 anthologies to prepare myself for the 3rd one. And you really can't go wrong by picking these up. It's don't get me wrong, we would love for you to buy our latest volume, but it really looks good on your shelf as a completed set. And there's just a shockingly wide spectrum of storytelling that goes into this. I was just really honored to play a small part in this, and I'm really proud of how our story turned out. Getting to work with Monhouse, I've always been grateful for every cover he's done for me. It's sort of a new level of gratitude getting to see interior work from him. And I think anybody who's enjoyed my previous work, any of sort of my mashup books, I think you'll find a lot to love, not just about my story, but I think this anthology as a whole.
Can I say something about David's point? Because
sure.
About they look good as a set. So I went into this trilogy and I designed the entire book to feel good as a set. So it has it's the same size, it's the same typeface that goes the same way on the spine. The only difference is it says 1, 2, and 3 at the bottom. So they really are. I don't know what happens in the future, but because if we do another one, there'll be another editorial team that does it. But for these 3 books, they're all hardcover of the exact same size from the same printer that have the same spine, that look like they're made to feel like a set. And I've always I went into the first book feeling like there would be 3 of them. That was always my plan. So I really, really, really did the work to make sure that now at the last one, it will feel like a complete thought on your bookshelf. And I know a lot of people have appreciated that when I've told them in the past, because a lot of things happen in different sizes, and suddenly you'll get book 2 and it'll be completely different in the last book. This is meant to be read as a singular thought, but they can each be read individually from each other.
So, David, first off, congratulations once again on the Ringo Award for the OZ.
Thank you.
Well deserving, and like I've posted before, Scout's Honor was awesome. Really enjoyed it, and Russell, your Ichabod Jones book, I really enjoyed those, and I really enjoyed talking to you probably 2 years ago about it.
Well, thank you. And the last one similarly ends in September. So meant to be read the same way. We have the same spine, the same size, the same everything. There's a theme in the covers for all 4 books, and that series is going to end in September. This is a year of ending. Just like this seems to be a year of like beginnings for David. It's a year of sort of endings things as I turn 40 for myself.
So David, do you want to kind of pitch your story one more time and where people can follow your work, and then we'll have Russell kind of pitch the Kickstarter as a whole, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah. If you're a fan of martial arts stories with a Lovecraftian twist, you'll love The Master of Kung FTHULHU by me, artist Monhouse, and letterer DC Hopkins. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PeposeD. It's my last name, first initial. David Pepose Comics on Facebook, davidpepose.com for my website. Or you can subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews.
Okay. And you have a couple, like we mentioned, you have a couple books coming out. So
yeah, I have a couple of small independent indie books come out. The first issue of the brand new relaunched Savage Avengers, written by me, art by Carlos Magno. That's going to be hitting comic shops everywhere May 4th. You can pre-order it anywhere comics are sold, as well as Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood number 2, which will be out, I believe, actually in June, but you can pre-order that right now, as well as Elektra, Black, White, and Blood number 3, which is in comic shops now, featuring my story with Danilo Beyruth called Weapons of Choice. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thanks again for taking the time to chat. It's always a good time, and hopefully we'll meet sooner rather than later in real life. All right, Russell, you wanna wrap it up and take us home?
Sure. So Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell is 107 stories about the gods and monsters of H.P. Lovecraft. It fills a big gapping in Lovecraftian lore, which is there's just not enough stuff about gods. So this is about the gods themselves, which allows us to have horror stories, but also cute and scary and whimsical and funny and things that feel like an animated movie and things that feel like a romance novel and all sorts of stuff. The difference is we're focusing directly on the gods themselves. I mean, in a time where Lovecraft thing was you look on the gods, you go insane. In a time of insanity, like I think it's kind of funny to have this idea that like, well, we're going to look on the gods a lot in these 3 books. And so there's 107 stories, over 150 creators, over and across the 3 volumes. This last one has Trina Robbins, David Pepose, and the other ones have over 70 creators. The last one was Paul Jenkins who did Spider-Man, and Ray Anthony Height, and Christian Gossett. And we have been so blessed to do these 3 books, almost 500 pages of art because of fans. This series has raised over $100,000 on Kickstarter. It's easily our best selling series of all time. And I think you're going to find something fun in its pages. If you love Lovecraft, it's going to be one thing. But especially if you love Lovecraft, but he has a very high bar to entry. And so if you wanted to indoctrinate someone else into the madness, it's a wonderful series for that. We have the origin myth. We have dark stories, scary stories, but stories that will introduce the people you love to the mythology that you love. And you can find that at CthulhuIsHardToSpell.com, or just head on over to Kickstarter and type in Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell.
All right. Well, thank you guys. And I know that we had to kind of work this out because we're in 3 different time zones. So, but it was great chatting to you guys, and we'll be in touch. And you guys be in touch if you have anything else you'd like to talk about.
Well, thank you
so much for having us.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.